Greetings, folks, and welcome to Lessons from the Cockpit. I am your host, Mark Hasera, and for over 60 years, my passion has been aviation. And for over 24 years, I was an Air Force pilot. Special thanks to Tanker Pilot for sponsoring this episode of our show. On the Lessons from the Cockpit Show, we debrief some of the most interesting and fascinating pilots, aircrew members, maintainers, and aviation enthusiasts from all over the world. Our show investigates the tactics, techniques, and procedures these aviators cultivated and created during extraordinary military, commercial, and even private aviation events. Our exploration gives practical advice on how does the aviation world work and expands critical thinking skills both in the air and on the ground. A lot of the stories that you're going to hear today and in subsequent episodes have never been told before. On today's show, my good friend Dave is going to share with us his lessons learned from being a fighter pilot and a commercial pilot for a large airline in the United States. And I'm going to apologize up front because you're going to hear a lot of background noises. We did our interview at the Hill Aerospace Museum, and there were a lot of kids there. But I think you're going to enjoy what he has to say. So, grab an adult beverage of your choice, sit down, strap in, and let's begin the Lessons from the Cockpit Show.
Welcome, Mr. Mason.
Well, it's good to be here.
Hill Air Force Base. We're going to walk around and look at airplanes all day and do some pretty fun stuff.
Kind of like that.
Gotta like that. Just quickly tell everybody what your background is.
I guess varied would be the best way to put it. I started out in the Air Force and flew the OV-10, the F4, the DE and the G, Joint Stars, and then ended up flying F-16s. The Personnel Center puts out these charts, these career progression charts. That's not on any of them.
Yeah. I don't know of any career that ever followed those, by the way.
After that, I got out of the Air Force and got hired by a little company you may have heard of called Value Jet. So I was flying DC-9s. And then I got hired by another major airline, which will remain nameless. And with them, I flew, DC-10 as a flight engineer. And then the 747-200 as a co-pilot.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's another non-standard career progression. And then after that, the triple as a co-pilot. A short period, triple as a co-pilot. And then 9/11 happened, and so I ended up going back to the 767 co-pilot. And then the Airbus 320 as a co-pilot. And then things got better, and I went back to 67, and I went back to the 777. Then we went through bankruptcy, and I went back to the 67. And then things got better, and I went back to the 777. 08 happened, and economic downturn, and things slowed down, so I ended up going back to the 67.
And see, people don't understand that how economics plays a part in sometimes the airplane you fly.
Yeah, exactly. You know? That seniority, everything with the airline business is
seniority. Yeah. And they don't understand how something like a downturn in the economy can make you go from one cockpit to the next.
Exactly. Exactly. With changes in paycheck and routes you're flying and where you're based.
Yeah, everything.
After that, so I'm on the triple.
So the economic downturn, you had a lot of pilots moving back and forth in airplanes.
Huge training. And that can actually be the limiting factor sometimes, how to get people through training fast enough to get them in position to fly the flights that are needed. Yeah, fortunately, that's never was my, I'm on the receiving end of that, not the figuring out end of it, which is probably fortunate for everybody. So I'm on the 777 co-pilot. Finally, all during this, the FAA decides to extend the retirement age from 60 to 65. That's what happened. Nobody moved for 5 years. I mean, there was literally no movement whatsoever for 5 years. People get sick, they retire, small numbers. Yeah. And so, they're still training people, but nothing like what you saw when the airline was expanding or contracting.
But what does that do to your schoolhouse in Denver?
It whipsaw. Just absolutely
Because they want people coming out the other side of the spigot. And so.
But only in the numbers that are, you got to remember, aviators are not running the airline business. The bean counters run the airline business.
Yeah.
And that's, as a stockholder, I can tell you that sometimes that's good. And as a pilot, I can tell you sometimes it can be disastrous.
Yeah.
There I am sitting in the right seat of the 777. I finally get a captain's bit on the Airbus. I like flying the Airbus. There are some things about it that, probably I would have done differently if I'd been king, but no one seemed fit to give me that job yet.
Yeah.
And
so going to a side stick didn't.
It took about 2.1 nanoseconds to get used to. Yeah, it just completely.
All right.
So I got my captain's bid to the A320. They have another bid. It was one of these periods where there's a lot of turnover. I had put a bid in on the 67, and I got it before I went to training on the Airbus. And so my first captain's bid was on the 767. And it's a dual qualifier, fly both the 57 and the 60. I had a lot of fun doing that. They were both really good airplanes. It still amazes me that it's a common type rating because the airplanes, some of the systems logic and stuff, some of it is the same, but basically they don't fly alike. There are systems differences. Boeing was able to talk the FAA into giving them a common type rating, which the airlines love. It saves them money from some beam counters again. For example, on rotation, and you wouldn't think this, 67 is much lighter in the nose than 57 is.
That's kind of counterintuitive.
Exactly. It's very counterintuitive, but it is. And if you're overly enthusiastic in the way you rotate, you can scrape the tail.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, especially if you're used to the 57, which requires a manly pull. Get the nose up. The first time you rotate the 67, it's like, whoa.
We're going flying.
To finish my career up in the airline business, my wife and I wanted to retire in Colorado. And I would just as well, the company pay for that move rather than we were living in Charleston, South Carolina at the time. Took a 737 captain's bid to Denver. I started out on the biggest piece of equipment the airline ever flew. Yeah. And I ended up on 737. This, again, is not a standard career progression.
So did you fly the 737s that have, it's all glass cockpit, but it have the heads up guidance system and all that kind of stuff?
As far as I know, the only company that bought that is Alaska, and that was required for some of the approaches that they shoot in the Alaska Panhandle. Having
lived in the Panhandle, I can understand that.
Yeah.
Juneau, Skagway,
right?
St. Petersburg, some pretty crazy places they go with that airplane.
Yeah. And
I'll never forget walking out. That's where I went on my LDS mission, Alaska. And I see these things pointing out in front of the engines. I'm like, what the heck are those? And it was bleed air.
Puffers.
To blow all the rocks out of the way. Yeah, I had to ask the pilot, I go, well, what are these things? And he goes, it puts like a shield of air in front of the engine so we don't suck stuff down the engines. Yeah. Okay. That's a mod that I've never seen before. Yeah. Okay.
Alaska, it's a different place to go. I love flying in Alaska. After I got out of the Air Force, before I went into the airlines, I ended up running the Aero Club at Elmendorf Air Force.
Just so everybody knows, there's going to be some background noise today, but we're at Hill Aerospace Museum. And those of you who've not been to Hill Aerospace Museum, you really need to come to this place because they've got a lot of really cool airplanes here and it's big. And they let you get pretty close to the planes and take a lot of pictures and so forth. Here at the Hill Aerospace Museum, they have the first airplane you flew was the OV-10 in the military.
First, after I graduated from pilot training, I got assigned to the OV-10, Simbach, Germany. You were talking earlier about things you learn from flying, and I learned several things. Most young pilots experiential learning. Everybody knows you always want to sound good on the radio. You've got to keep your cool. Not just talking on the radio, but also
while flying the plane.
The airplane, which is
rule number one: fly the jet.
Exactly. But there I was in Germany, flying my OV-10, the mighty OV-10. I had wanted to try a hammerhead stall in this thing, so I thought, nothing going on right now. Might as well give it a shot. Look around, check around. Nobody's coming. You got to clear. You don't want to present danger to yourself or others. Little did I know. So I jacked the nose straight up. OV-10 obediently runs out of airspeed very, very quickly. About this time, I decided that maybe the hammerhead stall wasn't a good idea. And at about that time, the nose of the airplane goes from straight up, whoop, to straight down.
And you're how high?
I don't really know. Lower than I probably should have been. I have just about 0 knots on the airplane. I'm looking at the ground.
Out of airspeed and out of ideas.
Yeah, well, fortunately, I did have an idea. Every neuron in my brain at that point is screaming, pull on the pole. But one of them. And that one neuron was screaming, if you do that, the wing is going to stall. So the one neuron was telling me, if you do that, the wing is going to stall. The airplane will still be stalled when you hit the ground.
And the accident report will read.
Exactly. Starting with you didn't have enough altitude. Starting to say that. So I pushed on the pole. The airplane flew straight down. Got flying airspeed. I recovered. I glanced at the altimeter. I was almost exactly
where you started. Wow.
Where I started out.
Wow.
So, a couple of takeaways from that. And that's happened, not that, but other things. When things get exciting, you've got to be able to compartmentalize and put all those fears and concerns in a little box, take care of the problem, fly the airplane.
Yeah. Brought some notes.
Yeah, brought some notes. Because at my age, Mark.
Folks, you got to see this. Not only did he bring notes, he put them on a computer and printed them out.
Yeah, well.
But you were flying at a really great time where you could take the airplane out and just do whatever you wanted.
Yeah, especially maybe things have changed, but at the time, forward air control was definitely a secondary mission, tertiary, whatever the word is, priority.
Not high on our list.
No. And so basically what they would do is they would give us an airplane and let us do whatever we wanted to, basically, for 2 hours. A great experience, a great place to learn for a young aviator. European weather is not a happy thing.
No.
And so,
yes, we will.
No glass cockpit.
IFR conditions, instrument flight rules conditions.
And so the way to learn is to go do it. I told you I started out on a 747, but I'd been a flight engineer, not a control actuator. So my first landing in a 747 is the first time I've landed.
Oh my gosh.
Years. You land in a sim and everything, but as good as training as that is, it's much different. We started in Chicago and moved to San Francisco. And the way they routed us in, we ended up coming in from the north. And we're flying by the airport, more or less over the Oakland airport. And the guy at the approaching of the runway, and we're up at like 6,000 or 8,000 feet. Guy turns us over to tower. Tower says, you're cleared to land. And you're at 6,000 or 8,000 feet of being the runway. Oh, this is going to be it. Oh, we got everything sorted. Idle, boards, gear down. Just as
nobody's got coffee in the back, so it'll be okay.
As quickly as we get slowed down, the flaps clunk, clunk, clunk. I finally had a moment to think about what was going on when I finally get everything sorted out on final. It just really hit me. There are 200 people in the back of this airplane that don't have a vote.
Oh, yeah.
And if I screw this up, all of a sudden the weight of responsibility thumped on young David's shoulder like I'd never experienced. But Mark, I had to. It was almost physical to put that out of my mind and concentrate on
flying the plane,
flying the airplane. Yeah,
see, and people don't think about that when you're flying in the back. If you're you're looking out the window, trying to keep the kids, happy and everything like that. They don't understand what's going on in the cockpit.
Completely. This is apropos of nothing except for your last statement. My wife flies from Charleston up to Washington, and the seat in front of her is grandson and granddad. And granddad's evidently a pilot. He's telling his grandson all through the flight, okay, the pilot's checking the controls. See the things on the window, he's checking the controls. Okay, the pilot's doing the sound clunk, okay, the pilot just put the landing gear up. That's what that sound was. They fly along, smooth as glass. They let down into Washington. All of a sudden, it gets really, really turbulent. The little kid yell loud voices, "Why is the pilot doing that?"
But so you're on final, 200 people in the back, and you're thinking to yourself, okay.
All of a sudden, the concern for my passengers is overwhelming my sense of, okay.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit below going.
Yeah. Aim point, airspeed, aim point, airspeed.
Fly the airplane. How long did all this take? Probably a second. But for that second, it was, and I've never gone through this again, moment. It was like, I've got to put this out of my mind. I'm not going to be able to fly. And again, you put all that stuff in a little box, figure it out later.
Yeah. See, people don't understand. Pilots have to compartmentalize a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of different things. Some of it's kind of mundane. Some of it's pretty important. Yeah. And you just go, okay, that's not a priority right now. And I need to put this back here for a bit.
Back in
and then you get on the ground and you scream and holler about it,
Back in the 70s and 80s, we were losing a lot of airplanes in the tactical world. We were losing a lot of airplanes back in the 70s or late 70s, early 80s. Tactical airplanes, running airplanes into the ground. Part of that was we had gone from basically a medium altitude construct in Vietnam to a low altitude construct to deal with the Soviets in Europe, training people to fly at low altitude. And it was basically something that we were frankly weren't very good at the time. And so we were killing a lot of people. And that's one of the things that they discovered is you've got to be able to not only compartmentalize, but also figure out, okay, I've got this long to work this problem, and I've got this long to work that problem. And that problem, I'm going to have to compartmentalize because I need to work these. The number one thing is don't hit the rocks. The number two thing is, maybe navigate, maybe what's the...
That whole aviate, navigate, communicate thing comes back to mind.
But then you need to go back to working fly the airplane, don't hit the rocks problem. And then, go out and work the next, how's my timing doing? Blah, look over my shoulder. Oh, what's that dot back there in the distance? Why did my RWR just like, it's one of those damn F-16.
But again, people on a highway don't understand that in cases you're going 9 times faster than they are, 8 miles a minute. Wasn't that the rule of thumb for TAC? I'm moving at 8 miles a minute, not 1 mile a minute, 8 miles a minute.
So, Tactical Leadership Program.
Yeah, TLP.
In Europe. And this Dutch F-104 pilot, day one, everybody gets up one at a time and explains their airplane, its strong points, weak points, and how they employ a tactical little recap. And so the Dutch F-104 guy stands up, and he says, I'll normally run 720 going into the target unless I get tapped, and then I'll go faster. Faster than 720 knots. Let's make the jump to light speed. The point is, the F-104 was a stinking. And
you look at the airplane, and there's one here not too far from us, and you look at it, and you can tell it's got this massive engine in it, J79, and it goes really fast. And it's made to go really fast.
Their warload was 2 bombs, one under each wing, and a centerline nape. And the plan was, if they got tapped running into the target, they punch off the centerline nape. Whoever's chasing them, whoever's intercepting them is going to be behind them because they're so fast.
It's going to run through a fireball.
It runs through the smoke, engine flames out. That's
not a problem anymore.
Exactly. He says, and if we make it if we don't get tapped on the way to the target, then we put the nape on the target.
I didn't know that, Dave.
Yeah. That was their plan.
Bombs and a nape.
Yeah.
At 720 knots. Two bombs. Not, yeah.
It's good for fast. It's not so good for turning.
No.
And it's not so good for hauling stuff.
No.
It looks good sitting on the ramp.
Oh, it does. It does. But that was a tough airplane to land, too. I mean, there's a lot of people that got killed in F-104s.
Yeah. Especially Germans. So
I remember reading the story about how Eric Hartman was not happy about that airplane because it was killing so many pilots.
Yeah.
It was killing a lot of people. And of course, Ivan Kinslow gets killed in one, famous pilot, because the ejection seat comes not out of the top, it goes out the bottom.
Only on the A and B models.
Oh, okay.
The later models, it goes up the rails. But so what do you do when you're in the pattern, the engine flames? Just, for example, engine flames out. To roll the airplane upside down to be able to punch out.
Yeah. And that's not where you want to do that.
Well, guess what happens? When they modified the airplanes or updated the airport firing check, they had F-104 drivers in that situation would roll the airplane upside down and then unchecked into the ground.
Oh,
and
no.
They had guys killed doing it.
Because you just don't think about that, do you?
While they were trained, into them, a natural act, roll upside down when you're at low altitude. And so
we're glad that changed.
So we were talking about, I think it's also a life lesson. For example, I was giving a briefing when I was working Joint Stars. And every year there was a big conference. The Army 4-star Forces Command commander, the Atlantic Fleet 4-star
was there,
and a TAC commander was there. I'm dating myself, TAC commander. And then, of course, 4-stars don't just, except for on the golf course, hang out by themselves. They've got
an entourage.
And so you've got a room probably as big as a ballroom, and it's full of colonels and generals. And so the guy that was giving the briefing ahead of me was a Marine. And I don't mean to pick on Marines, but this particular had nothing actually to do with that fact. But this guy was probably the expert, maybe worldwide. It's certainly in the U.S. military for mine warfare, naval, to counteract that. Because Marine amphibious operations.
That's what they do.
Be able to clear those.
That's what they do.
Out of the way. He was Mr. Naval Mine Warfare, even though he was Marine, but he was the expert. You walk out there and you see this big table with all those stars, all those colonels between you and that table. And it's pretty intimidating. And I felt so bad for this guy because, he knew the subject forwards, backwards, and sideways. But he was just so upset with the setting. He really gave a pretty shitty briefing. And I just felt so bad for him because, the information's there. He just wasn't able to say, I got to put that out of my mind and concentrate on this. So talking about.
And you've been in that situation before where you've had to brief when you were with J-Stars and everything, because that was a brand new airplane at Desert Storm. And it's like, okay, we've got this brand new capability. What are we going to do with it? How are we going to do with it?
Ended up after Desert Storm, after we took the airplane to Desert Storm, I ended up going around and it started out because they wanted one pilot, one operator, 3 MDS, every type of airplane, to go up to the air staff and brief what they did in Desert Storm. So there was an A-10 pilot right up there. I ended up doing it for a turn. And you don't just go up to the air staff and give a briefing.
Nope.
First you have to brief your boss, and then the two of you go in and they brief your boss.
There's a number of gates you have to go through.
Exactly. And so
all of them having input on what you're about to say.
Exactly. You may change, yes, sir, 3 bags full, change that slot. Get this wonderful briefing that has been signed off by everybody. Various people start asking for it. And so, of course, once you give it to somebody else hears about it.
They want it. So
I ended up being on the road a lot, briefing people.
You know what I found the other day?
No.
The commercial that the Joint Stars guys made from the sandstorm in Iraqi Freedom.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, they made a commercial, and they actually have the video of all of the tanks and trucks and everything coming out of Baghdad, the yellow triangles moving down the road, and they're talking about how they're going to do this and what they're going to do with all that information. Because Al-Hamdani, the guy that was the head of, he was the 3-star general that was in command of the defense of Baghdad. And he couldn't figure out, how did you Americans find us in a sandstorm? And they showed him that video.
Custer would have killed for it.
Yeah.
He would have killed.
Yeah. How can anybody survive against you guys? And the general said, that's the point. That is the point. Okay. You can't survive against us because we're dropping bombs and 75-mile-an-hour winds in a sandstorm. And he said,
figuring out where to go.
The bomb's figuring out where to go. The JDAMs don't care about wind. They just know I got to go to that point, and they'll do whatever it takes to get that point. Yeah. And he said in the debrief, I have never seen that display of firepower in that kind of condition in my entire career. And he'd fought in the Golan Heights during the 67 war. Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
Going back to, things that you've learned in the cockpit and the preparation. I don't care what you're doing with aviation. Is it possible to go out in an airplane and jump in, especially, light aircraft and fly off and, not check the weather, not do a flight plan and blah, blah, blah? Yes. Is that a good idea? Probably not. Certainly in commercial aviation and military aviation, you're going to be doing a whole lot of preparation from the time you walk through the door. You do ground school before you go fly airplane. You do sims before you go fly airplanes. Yeah. So by the time you get to the airplane, you're really pretty good at it. You're not as good as you're going to be. You need the experience and everything. Even on the day-to-day level, though, you're briefing, you're checking the weather, you're checking the flight plan, you're checking the weight and balance.
I still check the weather every day. People in my family automatically just ask me, well, what's the weather going to be like? Because they know I check it every day because I got into that habit. Maybe that's something you can talk about is habit patterns and what happens when you break them.
Oh, another OV-10 story, another embarrassing OV-10 story. I heard somebody say this one time, and it applies to me certainly. It says, he has much to be humble about.
That's a great line. He has much to be humble about.
Yeah. I'm in Zaragoza, Spain. We go down to, you couldn't get enough range time in Germany to go fill our weapons squares. And so we went down to Zaragoza, used the Spanish range down. Weather's great. You go to the beaches on the weekend. Life is pretty good down there. This was a joint use facility. You had the Spanish there. You had tankers there. And David comes in his mighty OV-10 and pitches out. And some F4 emergency aircraft calls, and the tower says, hey, we're going to need you to either break out of the pattern or extend your downwind.
Go somewhere else.
So I said, I'll just extend my downwind. And so the F4 lands, clears the runway, and they clear me for landing. But all this time, I'm thinking, I'm going to have to break out of the pattern, so I don't have my gear down. And where do you put your gear down? You'll put the gear down the same place every time. You pitch, get a beam the end of the runway, throw the gear down. Then you roll off the perch, at the right point there. And so...
Drilled in you from pilot training.
Yeah, and this is my habit pattern. This is how you do it every time. Well, except for this time when the gear was up and I'm having to extend my downwind and I'm checking out flight airplanes going and are they going to pitch out and then be ready to come off the perch and I'm going to be out here and listening to all this, and did the guy take the barrier, and am I going to blah, blah, blah. So lots of stuff going on. Habit pattern, they clear me to land. I come off the perch, and about halfway through the turn, why is that horn honking? Literally, you hear that as a joke, but that is literally what went through my mind.
Every airplane has one.
It's like, why is that horn going off? It doesn't normally have. Oh, shit.
Put the gear down. It's a gear horn.
Later on, a friend of mine was in the RSU, the runway supervisory box that sits out by the end of the runway, where they used to have people check to make sure that you put your gear down. So
configuration.
So he and I are talking on the club later that night, and he says, yeah, I noticed you put your gear down really late. Oh, yeah, because I was worried about maybe I had to go around or something.
That's one of the things, and a lot of accident reports have.
Oh, yeah.
It was a broken habit pattern, okay?
Exactly.
Missed a checklist item, and everything snowballed from there, whatever that might be. I've done it.
A million times.
Where I've gone,
that was just one of the most memorable.
And like Pig talked about not too long ago, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment.
That's very true.
And as young lieutenants, you got to go out and fly the airplane whenever you wanted, and we had the ACE program.
Right.
T-37s. We can't get time in the KC-135 because it's expensive, but the T-37 was perfect for New England. And it was go out and develop your aviation experience, okay?
Right.
And there was a number of times where, I won't do that again. Okay. And you know what, Dave? It always happened at Albany. Going into Albany, I swear to you, Albany is Satan's playground for pilots. Every time I went into Albany, something weird happened when I was flying ACE. We get cleared to land. Remember, it's cross runways. It's cross runways, and we land. And as we're getting to the cross of the runways, a 727 goes over the top of us. How'd that happen? And then we delayed our takeoff and land at Albany after a storm's gone through. The Tweed only weighs like 6,000 pounds, and we hydroplaned. And you can feel, I tell everybody, flying is 5 senses. Flying is 5 senses, yes, even your sense of smell, particularly your sense of feel and your butt. Jim Tries and I felt the airplane lift up and go sideways, about 20 degrees to runway heading. And we're sliding down the runway, pointing 20 degrees to the left. We hit the dry patch, and the airplane goes boop, boop, and goes back. And we just start laughing like crazy. We're in Satan's playground for pilots again. Here we are at Albany, Satan's playground for pilots. Your story?
Yeah. Near Albany, Manchester, New Hampshire. And wintertime, and this is 57. Captain goes downstairs to do a flight planning, and first flight of the day, dark 30, and I go out and do the pre-flight and get the plane all warmed up and everything. And the flight attendants are doing their thing. And all of a sudden, I hear this scream. Yeah, it's not like eek, full scream. And I get up and look down the cockpit doors offset, just Captain can see. All you have to do is turn around and look down actually have to get up and do some work. This is not unusual for co-pilots. I look down there, and there's all this smoke billowing into the cabin. And about this, I turn around. I grab the mic, the hand mic, call ground and say, roll the trucks to whatever gate fire. I yell at the flight attendants, get off the airplane, pick up the other microphone for the PA system and say, get out through the front door now. And I turn off the battery switch. And as I leave the airplane, flight attendants are already off. As I leave the airplane, the captain's running down the jet bridge. Why the hell are you de-icing with the APU running? We're de-icing? Guy's first day on the job.
Oh, no.
And they said, take this truck and go over there and de-ice that
airplane.
All those little nice things about call the guys up, make sure the airplane's configured correctly, APU's off and all that. They didn't bother to tell them about that.
Didn't tell them the planning factors.
Just go take that truck and de-ice it.
Okay, boss, I'll do what you tell me to do.
And he did. Yeah, we were delayed coming out of Manchester that day.
And now you got a lot of nervous passengers in the back going, I ain't going on this airplane.
No, there were no passengers on the airplane. It was me and a flight attendant. We opened up. Fortunately, there was a breeze blowing. We opened up because that stuff's toxic.
Oh, yeah. I know.
So we had to wait until we waited about two and a half hours for the air to clean it.
Just so people understand, the de-icing fluid is going into the APU intake and is being burned inside the APU, which is putting air inside the airplane because that's how you air condition the airplane on the ground.
Exactly.
The air cycle or the engine running the APU is burning fuel and de-icing fluid at the same time, and that's what's causing the smoke. People don't think about that. And like you said, this young person just went and did what he was told.
Exactly.
see, that's where your systems knowledge comes in too, isn't it? Your systems knowledge of going, because how many times have we been in an emergency and we've had to go through all of our systems knowledge on electrics, pneumatics, hydraulics, all those kinds of things. So here comes another story. I can see it coming across your head, your brain.
The nicest thing a co-pilot ever said to me, we're coming back from London and the master caution light comes on and look up, outflow valve has failed. Well, you got two of them. There's one outflow valve to control it. So we flipped over to the other one, and it's out too. So now you're doing manual stuff.
Manual pressurization.
Exactly. So this takes much faster to do it than it took to explain it. And I checked the pressurization, and the cabin's going up. It's almost to 10,000 feet, rubber jungle in the back. So go over and close
the rubber jungle. That means everybody's asleep in the back.
Well, all the oxygen masks fall out.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, before it even goes.
That's the rubber jungle.
So I look at the first officer and I say, why don't you get the checklist out for that? We got the problem.
Yeah.
Fly the airplane.
Let's make sure we did it the right way.
Exactly. Make sure we didn't miss anything, but memory is imperfect. And we go through the checklist. Everything was good. And later on, the first officer says, I'm really glad I was flying with you today when that happened. That is the nicest thing first officer's ever said to me.
Isn't that amazing? Because in the Air Force, man, that's what it was. Okay, get out the checklist.
Yeah.
I had an experience where no training I'd ever had dealt with the problem. I had a bleed duct failure under the floor, and it started the floor on fire. Okay? And what was really sad was somebody had plugged 2 holes in the manifold and didn't tell us. We're swapping out airplanes. We're taking an airplane from a base in the States going back to Kadena because the airplanes could only be on the base for 2 years due to the corrosion, the salt air. The crew chief says, you're not going to believe this. Come look at this. First of all, put your gloves on because it's really, really hot down there because it was before the air cycle machine. So there's 1,300, 1,400 degree air blowing out on both sides onto the elevator cables of the airplane.
Oh, that's not good.
This was like a compound emergency. And again, you're looking at a checklist and going, there's no checklist for this. But that's where that intuitive expertise takes over, where you go, okay, slow the airplane down. Here's our best airframe speed. Start pointing back toward Honolulu. We were out 200 miles west of Honolulu. I told
it happened there.
Well, it happened the day before. And we had 26 packs in the back. Mm-hmm. And this time I didn't have any packs in the back. And the AMC commander, he was hacked. I've got all these people that need to get to Kadena. I said, hey, we had a problem. He goes, it says they couldn't duplicate it. I said, yeah, on the ground. I bet you I can duplicate it in the air.
Would you like to come with us?
Would you like to come with us, sir? Yeah. And sure enough, we came back. And the crew chief that found it had the problem before. You know how he knew we were on fire under the floor? He saw the paint bubbling on the floor. That was one of maybe 3 times when I was flying in the airplane during my career where I thought, you know what, we may not make it back home.
They've lost many an F4 because of bleed air duct failures. Bleed air duct failures are
I didn't know
bad.
that.
Oh, yeah. Remember the C and D models had, or maybe it was just a D, had boundary layer control. It blew.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
And over the thing, and then they kept off the front BLC. It was the flaps front. It still blew air out over the leading edge, but it didn't blow out over the flaps. The one was blowing all this, 1,100 degree, whatever it was, very, very hot air fuel cell.
Oh, jeez.
And that was a bad outcome. Undesirable aircraft state.
That was the thing with the tanker. It had it on both sides. Somebody had tried to plug it on both sides. It's blowing onto the elevator cables, and it's only about 3 inches above the forward body tank, the top of the forward body tank that had 18,000 pounds of gas in it. I got on the ground, and my co-pilot, a fairly new co-pilot, says, hey, the first thing you had me do was ident, 7700 and ident. I said, yeah, because I wanted them to be able to at least say, we know that the crash probably happened here. because they can go lat long from that little flash.
Yeah.
And I said, that's where they'll find the pieces, and his eyes kind of got a little big. Yeah. You mean you thought we were going to die? I said, didn't you? And he goes, well, yeah, but I didn't want to tell you that.
Got to be cool.
Got to be cool. Got to sound cool on the radio.
I want to circle back one last time. Things that I have takeaways. The value of a debrief. And you can learn. You can learn something, and I don't care whether it's this podcast or the Challenger accident board or whatever. It doesn't go to an accident board. There's really nothing that if you don't take the time and think about what happened good, what happened bad, what can I do better next, and how do I do that? How do I avoid the things that happened this time? So the next time is better.
Do you know how many instructors?
Strong believer
in debriefing. It's interesting because I had flown with a number of instructor pilots, and we'd get back on the ground and we wouldn't even talk about the flight. We go, okay, let's fill out the paperwork and go home. It's 1:00 in the morning. That principle and concept wasn't ingrained in my head until much later in my career, and I realized that I spent a lot of time with my co-pilots, particularly co-pilots and boom operators, telling them, this is why we're doing this, all right? Particularly after I developed the weapons school, got deployed. After that, I remember one of my boom operators going, okay, you know a lot more about combat flying the tanker than any other aircraft commander I've ever flown with, all right? Why are you doing this, and why are you doing this, and why are you doing this? Why is the F-15E taking more gas than the F-15C, and all these, just some basic stuff that he's just never been taught. Some of my debriefs were actually pretty long. And of course, the weapons school debriefs could go for hours. Yeah, for hours at the middle of the night. You got another great story, don't you?
So, flying F-4s out of Moody, and we're going to go support the weapons school ME phase, the F-15 weapons school mission employment. And the way they do that is they pick a point on in the airspace, and they say, you have an entire squadron of F-4s, and all you have to do, and we have 4 F-15s, and we're going to defend that point, and all you have to do is fly one airplane over that point, and you're a success, and we have failed. And we have to kill your entire squadron with our just 4 airplanes for us to succeed. Mark, they handed us our ass.
Did they really?
They handed us our ass every stinking day until our weapons officer in the squadron goes and talks to the weapons controller. Our weapons control works against these guys. And then we did that. And we actually, on the 3rd day, we got somebody, or maybe the 4th day, we got somebody across the point. You talk about a killing machine. And guys, now, let's face it, you're a basic weapons school graduate. He's a cut above. They're a really good stick. I'm getting away from the point. The point was, on one of these early flights, and they're debriefing. And they're debriefing, and they're debriefing. And on forever.
Like every stick input, almost.
Yeah. They dissect every single person's tape to the nth degree. Mm-hmm. And finally, after hours, and all we want to do is, because we're stuck there in the room with them.
But you learned a lot, didn't you?
I learned that I don't like weapons school debrief. Yes, I did learn a lot. But so finally, one of the guys turns, they get to the end of all their tapes, and finally, the guy says, one of them kind of perks up and looks over at us and says, well, let's see one of your tapes. So the backseater hands him a tape, and he slaps it in the machine. You have to understand, F-15 radar is computer processed returns. It shows as radar returns. And it shows some other stuff about it. It's basically a clean display. Our F4 display.
Not so much.
It looked like something by Salvador Dali. Swirls, lines, and shit changing. Sweep to sweep. And this young guy's mouth literally falls open, and he looks at it, and his eyes get big, and he turns around, and he looks at the backseater, and he says, what is that? And the backseater says, that's Nevada. Never seen ground clutter before on his radar. This was a new experience to him. And the backseater points out at some barely perceptible little spot of light on the return and says, and there it's you.
There's you. Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
That little speck right there is you.
I've never seen ground clutter in a radar picture before, which...
People don't understand, having been to mission employment, it's now called integration, okay? Advanced integration, it's called now.
Okay.
All right, they've changed the name to it. They changed the whole syllabus based on historical events, okay? It's really interesting how they did this, okay? And they said, this thing in World War II is where we do all the airlift and airdrop stuff. And I mean, it's really quite cool. Anyway, ME, I think Nellis becomes like the 18th world's largest air force for like 2 weeks during mission employment, because every stinking weapons school division comes, plus the guys that are picked to be adversarial like you guys. And now, I don't know if you know this, there's even a space weapons school. There's even an ICBM weapons school.
No kidding.
Yeah, an ICBM weapons school. There's an ICBM. Oh, man. Yeah. I know. It's like, well, what do you do with an ICBM? Okay, well, we're going to nuke you.
I mean, I'm sure there's like, okay, well, in a tactical situation, we do this versus.
But that's one of the things that
option 3 of the PSYOP.
Well, one of the things that when I was working at Rockwell was conventional ICBM. And I raised my eyebrows.
That fast.
Well, exactly. Exactly.
Put a piece of concrete in the
ground. It's moving 17,000 miles an hour.
Exactly. It's got a lot of KE.
It's got a lot of kinetic energy. So if it hits a city block, it's going to take out everything around that city block too.
Yeah.
What was really funny about this?
We'll know when it arrives.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. They'll hear it coming. And that was the crazy thing about this particular conference we had with the ICBM folks, okay? And of course, there's a lot of Air Force folks that were there, and there was a lot of submarine folks that were there too. We're looking at conventional capabilities for ICBM. My first thought was, what? What did you just say? Because I grew up in Strategic Air Command, and it was, the multiple independently reentry vehicles are going to come down and rain death on top of you. And now they're thinking, well, we may just want to take out this city block with something moving at 17,000 miles an hour. And I'm like going, ooh, wow. The space weapons school came to our weapons school and taught the whole GPS course for a day. And it was one of the most amazing courses I've ever sat through. Space weapons school. Everybody calls it Starfleet Academy. I'm at Starfleet Academy, But the one guy that came up, like 3 classes when I was there, his call sign was Cowboy, and he gave an incredible brief on navigation, space technology, orbitology. Holy smokes, I went out of there thinking, man, I got a much greater respect for GPS, particularly GPS-guided weapons.
I'm working on this book about Desert Storm, and I've got a chapter in there on the space stuff and because of that, I've had to get smart on this stuff, or at least smarter. And Knuckle Dragon fighter pilot trying to get smart about orbital mechanics and blah, blah, blah. Very, very, very interesting.
Oh, it is.
I've learned a huge amount about stuff that I thought I knew about. And fact is, I really didn't know the square root of.
Well, here's a story for you that I was told when I was in the KAOC during the Afghan war. One of the warlords had like his brother killed on the side of the road. And they had these 2 fairly large Mercedes trucks full of stuff. And talk about how space assets become this political tool for the coalition. I never put those 3 things together in my mind. But what happened is the warlord guy is like going, yeah, my brother got killed and the trucks got taken and all the stuff that was in the back of them and everything like that. And the space guy goes, well, approximately where? And he says, well, along this road right about here. And the space guy says, okay, I'll be back in about 20 minutes. Okay. Of course, the warlord dude is like, where's he going?
Can't tell you.
I can't tell you. Okay. A room. Okay. He's going to a very special room here. And he comes back and he tells the warlord, all right, here's exactly where the trucks were. Here's what was in the trucks. They got ambushed by these people And these 3 cars that they were in went this way, and they're now here.
If for any reason you want to go.
Yeah. And by the way, those 3 cars, it was like a week later. Those 3 cars are still going back and forth to that place. So that's where you need to go. And of course, Mr. Warlord goes, "What?" And he goes, yeah, the guys that did this, don't ask me questions, but I can tell you their point of origin is this house right here. And oh, by the way, if you go there like in the next hour and a half, they'll probably still be there.
Yeah, based on what we've seen.
Based on things.
Yeah.
That's all this guy, and this was the space guy telling me this. So he said the Warlord became our best buddy after that because he was able to find out, first of all, what happened to his brother, what happened to all his stuff, and they were able to go and recover it.
I'm going to change the subject, get talking about the book. I use flight manuals as source material.
And you have a lot of them.
I have a lot of flight manuals, but one flight manual I don't have is the C-29. One of those things you don't think about. You don't just deploy a million airplanes. We didn't put a lot of airplanes over to some place. You don't set up approach, radio, instrument landing system. Not only airplanes, we also deployed all the stuff that airplanes need to operate in all. And you don't just use it. You don't take it out of the box and plug it in and turn it on.
No.
You've got to qualify it. And so we had these airplanes, C-29s, that we used to do this. Well, guess what? I have a U-2 flight manual, but I don't have a C-29 flight manual. So if anybody hears this and has a C-29 flight manual, Bubba, I want to talk to you.
So all the listeners know, when you go into Dave's garage, he's got literally a wall in his garage of bookshelf, just of flight manuals, literally. This literally goes the length of his garage. Having been to your house,
My wife has no problem with this.
Maybe not. Maybe not. So did we get through all your list there?
We got through all the big bullets.
Okay.
Did we hit all the stories? No, but.
Just real quick, what's one last story from flying in the airlines? If you were to go up to, I was talking to George Nolly last week.
Yeah.
They're hiring 140 pilots a week right now. And of course, you just left there recently, and now they're having to train 140 brand new pilots at United. That's a lot. That's a lot. If you were standing in front of a class of 140 brand new pilots with varying degrees of experience, what would you tell them?
I have no clue. Actually, I would tell them the same 3 takeaways I just gave you. Be able to compartmentalize, prioritize and compartmentalize. It really is prep. Do not expect to be spoon-fed.
Yeah.
Or you put in, the more you sweat in training, the less
you bleed in combat. Boy, isn't that the truth?
In this case, combat is when you go into your check ride and debrief. The airlines are late to the debriefing game. The way they were doing it when I left, I salute them because they embrace the concept. I cringe about the way that they have
implemented
it. Take away from the experience everything that you can. Put it in that of experience and use it to go forward with, because that's...
See, one of the things George told me last week was that little piece of knowledge that you learned years ago, you'll never know when you're going to need it.
Exactly. Okay.
You're going to go back and pull that rabbit out of that hat and go, oh man, that just saved me and all of my passengers in the back of the airplane. And he talked about fuel. He was talking about fuel. He said several times when he was a captain, he put extra fuel on the airplane, and the first officer would go like, why did you do that? Why are we lugging around all this fuel? Going into San Francisco, they have this thing called earthquakes, or they have bad weather at Midway or in Chicago.
Or the other Midway. The weather Where you take off from may be great. The weather where you're going may be great. But maybe the weather at your alternates is not so wonderful. And if you blow the cabin and you got to go down to 10,000 feet to go drive over to the alternate, and the weather's not too good there, and you end up going to the alternate,
it gets dicey.
But the company hates when you put more gas on it, because 99 times out of 100, you don't use the extra gas. But guess what?
Yeah.
At one time.
That you do it. I know.
And that's the difference between there is one airline, all they fly is 737s. I will not say their name. They're a big player in the domestic market.
Yeah. I think we knew who that is.
They don't equip their airplanes to do Cat 3 landings because their beam counters. Their beam counters have said, you do so few of these, we'll accept diversions.
Yeah.
And that would have otherwise gotten you on the ground. United, Delta, American, all are Cat 3 certified, which is, a huge expense. The airplanes have to be maintained a special way. The pilots have to be trained a special way. You don't use it too often.
Tell everybody what Cat 3 mins are.
0, 0. And there's variations but depending on how the airplane's equipped and how the board is equipped, needless to say, instructor pilots love asking that question because you have to get into the books and
look at things. Yeah.
Look at all the different things that feed into that part of the equation.
Yeah.
You can have a Cat 3 airplane and not have a Cat 3. You can have a Cat 3 airport. Denver's a perfect example. Guess what? All the Cat 3 runways are landing north. So
really?
So if you need to land Cat 3 going east-west, you're out of luck.
You're coming to Salt Lake. Our closest alternate when I was at Kadena, Kunsan.
No kidding.
In another country. Yeah, think about that.
Yeah.
We had 2 runways, fortunately. The fighter guys always use the inside runway. We always use the outside runway because that's the way we were split on the airfield. We had these things in the Pacific called typhoons.
Yeah.
And one of our alternates, closest alternate, was on the Korean Peninsula. And so I would carry sometimes 10, 15,000 extra pounds of gas when I could see that the weather was going to really hurt us. You're living in the Pacific, 4 o'clock every afternoon. What do you see? Big honking thunderstorm over your base. Exactly. And it just pours and pours and pours and pours for about an hour and a half. And that was an hour and a half worth of gas in the KC-135.
More than once in the Pacific, been at landing, and there's a storm, a downpour, and you can literally not see the back half of the runway or the end of the runway because of all this rain.
I've landed that way at Kadena many times. Or where I've broken out, landed, and then halfway down the runway, poof. Yeah, it's beach time. And I've landed the other way too, where, it's nice here, and halfway down the runway, oh, crap. And you can hear it hitting the airplane too. That's what a lot of people don't understand is, man, you can hear those kinds of raindrops smacking the airplane, particularly when you're in the air, man. It sounds like 1,000 ball-peen hammers pounding on the airplane.
You want to walk around? We can tell airplane stories. I can tell you one right now. A1 Skyraider.
Yeah.
So, a guy my dad knew down at New Smyrna Beach had a Skyraider, and it was in original but pretty rough shape, and he was in the process of restoring it. So the first thing they decided to do to improve performance was pull all the armor plate off the airplane. Mark, they had a pile of armor plate that came up to my hips.
Oh, no.
Serious.
That's a lot of armor.
Yeah.
That's a lot of weight too. Yeah. And how thick were those plates? Do you remember? Quarter inch, half inch?
Yeah, quarter inch.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
Yeah, maybe 3/16, but it's serious.
It was serious armor plate.
Yeah. Some of it was shaped to go fit on the inside of the cowling and everything. So they were, that F-104 doesn't carry that armor.
It doesn't carry that. No. That's made for speed. So that's actually Bernie Fisher's airplane right there too.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
That used to be in the Air Force Museum.
They moved it. They brought it out here because he lived in Idaho until he passed away. But that's actually the airplane that he was flying in when he got the
about Bernie Fisher. You can get this out if you want to. He came to a flying safety meeting that I was part of. Before he went to Vietnam, he was flying Beavers.
Haviland Beavers.
He was doing missile site support out of someplace on the northern tier. And he was flying his Beaver for whatever reason, I don't remember, to Minneapolis. The weather report that he got, the winds were 180 out. So he ends up in the ADIS. And
no.
Yeah, this is back in the early 60s. They intercept him, get him back on course for Minneapolis, and he sees the airfield from a distance, gets in close, and because of this little divergence up into almost Canada, he's running low on gas. And
fuel is your hourglass.
Yeah, and his glass ran out.
Oh, no.
And the engine comes to a stop. And magically, he'd lost the airport. He was having a hard time worried about his gas, so acting it. And all of a sudden, there's this row of white lights it's a roll. Got to be the runway, right? Lines up, touches down, and he says, as I just started to flare, I noticed these things in the darkness on either side.
Oh, no.
Touches down, not on the ground, these things, bunkers. He says that about 2 minutes later, a guy with a gun and a Jeep drives up. He had landed in a munitions storage.
Oh, no.
He saw his white lights on the bunkers. They brought gas out to him the next day, gassed up his airplane. He flew back.
Yeah, because a Beaver gets off no runway.
Mark, think about this. Okay, so he goes on and wins the Medal of Honor in Vietnam, saved another guy's life. What would have happened these days? You were in your airplane out of gas, you were going to land off field. You're going to get your wings ripped off and tossed out the door. Fortunate
for Bernie.
Yeah, that did not. Well, even more fortunate for the guy he picked up.
Jump Myers, the guy you picked up, that he threw into the cockpit. Yeah, see, and that's the thing I tell people is when you and I started flying is way different than flying now.
Absolutely.
Way different than flying now.
105. You see the refueling probe stick. As you know, the D Model 105 had both systems.
Yeah, it does.
Probably the only airplane I know of that had both systems. We had a guy in my OV, I think it was my OV-10 squadron, one of the squadrons that I was in, owned F-105s in Vietnam. And he says whenever they were in the arming area and F-4s flew by, everybody raised up.
The middle digit.
Exactly representative of to salute the F-4s.
Yeah, there's two F-5s. Apparently that 105 is Colonel Douglas, who got kills in World War II when he's flying P-47s or something. Arkansas Traveler is the name of the airplane. Yeah. Kind of a unique airplane because it's got a unique history behind it. And then, of course, the Wild Weasel is at the other end. Now, you flew Weasels. That's a crazy mission.
Mark, everyone thinks that. And in Vietnam, for a period of time, you're going to go into a dark alley. There's somebody in that dark alley that could mug you.
And you don't know who it is?
Mark. Do you want to go in the dark alley without a gun or with a gun? I'd rather be the Weasel with the gun.
And think about how tactics changed because remember, Vietnam War, these are brand new. This is a brand new mission in Vietnam.
Oh, yeah.
And we're trying to figure out how do we beat these surface air missiles back. We're not so successful at first.
We could spend time talking for hours with nothing about this subject because there's all sorts of things that play into it. The very first set of they had ECM pods before all this. They were for the airplanes that were going to carry the nukes. Russia, we're going to give them ECM pods. They're associated with a nuclear mission. We don't like that nuclear. You guys keep those ECM pods locked up. We don't want to see them. When we start getting hurt by the SAMs, they pull these things at us. Guess what? They don't damn work. Why? Because we haven't been using them and testing them. So, we go to Desert Storm. Guess what happens? We pull these ECM pods out of storage. Yeah, we fly with ECM pods. No, that's something that's on there. I want my airplane clean, ECM pod on there. And
you had the latest one, a 184 pod.
Oh, the Weasels had that. But I'm talking about in general. 119 pod, Desert Storm, had like 50% mission capable rate. And they deployed
I didn't know that.
And more pods.
I didn't know that. It was that low. Yeah. Jeez.
So history repeats itself. Your eye on the ball. Talking about weasels. I don't know if it was Day or Deathlison that told it. We had both of them come hands.
Both Medal of Honor winners.
Exactly. One of them goes to check into the BOQ at Karate or Horn or wherever they were. I don't know. So he checks into the BOQ, and because he's on a long, for a full year, he should have gotten one of the permanent party Q, which were nice. They wouldn't send him one. They gave him one of these trailers that they had to share with people. And he's like, "Why are you doing this?" And the guy looks at him and says, "You're a weasel. You ain't going to be here long enough to rate a permanent BOQ."
Oh, no. Yeah. You won't be here long enough to use a permanent one. Because, see, early on, they had like a 50% loss rate.
Oh, yeah. They had huge losses. And yet, those guys, and a lot like a B-17 crew in World War II, and yet, every day when your name appeared on the schedule, they still walked out to the ramp and got that airplane, in that airplane, and went out there and killed a communist.
Because they're dealing with new missiles. They're dealing with new tactics.
Oh, yeah.
They went from an F-100 to an F-105. And even the F-105 went through several iterations of ECM antennas, missiles, Shrike missiles, Standard Arm missiles.
So the Navy develops this anti-radiation missile, the Shrike. I don't know if it's hubris is the word for it. I suspect it is. But the guys that are developing the missiles, they were developing it just about the time the Cuban Missile Crisis was the Navy says, "Hey, we need missiles to go attack these radar sites." How many radar sites are there? I think there were 6, or just use that number. So they made 6 missiles.
Oh, jeez.
If you know anything about the Shrike, its PK is not 100. In fact, there's nothing that has, although the AMRAAM is damn close. We used to say AMRAAM was smarter than some wingmen. Because it could shoot and target.
So when you were flying the Weasel mission, you went from Standard Arm, Shrike, all the way to the Harm. Did you not?
When I was doing the mission, Bertha, which is what we call a Standard Arm, they had launched one, and it went about 500 feet in front of the airplane and blew up. Ooh. And what happened was everything, it's like milk. It's got a shelf life. And the rocket motors had exceeded their shelf life and were developing cracks. And when that happens, it burns through the cage and it blows up. We were still using the Shrike, which was a very, very tactically limiting weapon. Harm. We had the APR. We had the F-4G originally had the APR-38. We updated that to the APR-47. And at the same time, we'd already had the Harm, but we got a different version of the Harm. That thing had a well-deserved reputation for killing SAMs because those, a well-trained crew, the right equipment, were very, very, very lethal. The Shrike, you had to point exactly
where
at the site.
Yeah.
There was its ability to take care of azimuth errors was very limited. Harm, you got a circular footprint around the airplane. You could shoot at stuff behind you.
Oh, my God.
Behind you. We had a dynamic footprint. The backseater on his scope got a dynamic footprint. And if you're up high going really, really fast, amazing how far that missile would go. Truly.
A very big footprint.
Yeah, a long, long way. As opposed to the Shrike, where you had to get up close and personal with a lot of guys that,
and that's why we lost a lot of guys, because you had to get close to the SA-2s.
Exactly.
And the range, the SA-2's range for a while was longer than the Shrike's range.
Those guys are learning. The
bad guys are learning, the good guys are learning.
The worst thing you can do is assume that your enemy is an idiot. Worst thing you can do, because they're not.
No.
And so every time they lost a missile site, they're learning, okay, we tried that didn't work. What do we go next time? Just like we're sitting there, okay, we didn't kill a site today. Why didn't we do it better? What can we do different?
See, I remember something you told me when we were talking about this a long time ago, because remember, Leo Thorsness was carrying CBUs, cluster bombs on his airplane. And I remember you telling me, bombing a SAM site, say the words and your insurance rates go up. you know, we're dropping bombs on the SAM site.
That's insanity.
But they had developed the tactics where they would launch the Shrike and the Shrike would make a certain signature.
Actually, they added, over the Shrike time, they actually added a white phosphorus element to the warhead.
Oh.
So it would mark the target.
Oh.
And the reason they did that was because of this tactic, so they could follow up.
With a cluster bomb.
Yeah.
With a cluster bomb. So
that assumes, of course, that the Shrike
did it's supposed to. Exactly.
Hit the radar.
Exactly.
Which frequently would not.
SA-2 had a very distinct signature on the ground when you saw it. It was a Star of David kind of thing. When you're looking at that, you're close and you're within range.
It has a Star of David. Today, you can go out on Google Earth and look across.
Oh, yeah.
And you can find SA-2.
Oh, yeah. You can find them on the Nellis Range.
Yeah.
On the Nellis Range, they've got them too.
Part of the problem in Vietnam was, North Vietnamese are very, very good at camouflage.
Yeah.
And so they would camouflage their sites. They would actually camouflage. They had crap hanging off the missiles. And so there you are breezing along. Oh, by the way, there's AAA going off and the raw gear is going off and you're checking 6 and blah, 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 and I wonder what my fuel is. Oh, it's that low. And while all of this stuff is going on, you're still trying to find the SAM site with flies. And so, a very tough tactical problem. I got to shoot a Shrike. They have a combat hammer program where you can go out and crews gain experience with munitions that are about to time out anyway. Mm-hmm. We go out to Nellis and we do our thing and get all the clearances and get lined up because you can't shoot it just willy-nilly. It's got to be like right there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, who knows what might happen. The missile ends up someplace where it's not supposed to end up, which mine very well may have done because I pull up, poof, right where I was supposed to be parameters-wise, missile comes off. And that's the last they ever saw of it. They had no idea where it went. And so it wasn't near the target. They had a camera on the target.
Yeah, but it didn't hit that. We don't know where it went, but we know it went.
Yeah, exactly.
So did you ever get to fly against the MiGs at Nellis?
I did.
In the old Constant Peg program?
Yeah.
What was that like?
That was some of the best training that I ever had.
Really?
I would say the best training that I ever had for air was probably, they had a sim at Luke, and it was in 2 F4 cockpits and 2 domes. Cockpits were on little rails. They were actual cockpit sections. Yeah. And the dome was actually televisions. This is ancient technology. And the dome was made up of TV sets packed in together. And so you've got a pretty realistic
picture. Yeah.
And they'd slide you in there. They could either have the airplane represent an F4 or they could have it fly look the same, but it would, or you could flip a switch and it'd be a MiG-21.
Oh, my.
And so you could actually go out and learn how to dogfight against a MiG-21. You could start out flying 2 F4s at each other. And I think this was genius. The guard, again, doing things right. Guard would run guys through the contact phase, learn how to fly the airplane. And then they'd go through all the academics for air-to-air. And then they took all their people to Luke, ran them through the simulator, and then brought them back. When you're talking about doing a high yo-yo and stuff, a low yo-yo, it's one thing. And then you go out in the airplane and it's like, okay, I think I remember this. All the guy has to do in the sim is say, okay, let's stop you here. I'm going to back it up, and I want to talk you through some things. You're able to go backwards, go forwards, and you're able to see, I didn't come enough out of plane, or, I came up too much out of plane. I need to, work take little chunks of the problem rather than trying to solve everything at once, which gives him turning room. Which you don't give
that's education, not training.
Exactly. So, that was huge. Constant Peg was huge. And funny thing, I was thinking about Constant Peg coming up here. I was they had real problems maintaining their MiG-23s. And So I was one of the few guys in the squadron that got to do a profile against the MiG-23. And the F-4 is no slouch for itself. So we get up and we do this little drag race thing. You get up there, line a beam, and the guy says, 3, 2, 1, go. And you stroke it in a burner, and he just walks away from you. That MiG-23 could accelerate like nobody's freaking business. The other thing was, and I mean, the guys in Vietnam saw this, man, when that MiG-21 goes nose on to you, outside of a certain range, he just poof, disappears. It's like in Germany, you'd have these stacks of gliders. And man, when they go nose, they're turning in this thermal. And as long as they're in profile, you see them just fine. But man, when they go nose or tail onto you, poof, they disappear. And it's like, I know he's there. I'll wait a second.
For a while, you don't see him.
You got this stack of airplanes and they're appearing and disappearing. It can be unnerving when there's weather here and weather there, and you've got to go where that stack of airplanes is to get home. The MiG-21 does the same thing, man. When it goes nose on to you, he can freaking disappear. So,
and see, that's all stuff you learn only by fighting those things.
Yeah, they tell you that in training.
Okay, again, that's the difference between training and education.
Yes, exactly.
All right?
Exactly.
All right? And that was one of the things that we drilled into people at the weapons school. Okay, this is not training. This is education. Okay, you're going to do things in the airplane that you've never done before. As a matter of fact, did you know that our retrograde procedures were restricted maneuvers?
No,
we weren't allowed to do them in the airplane. And so here we are flying the first night of Desert Storm. MiGs are flying. And we're thinking we have to do retrogrades we've never done. And we're doing them at night on a moonless night. Okay. A little unnerving. Now, I understood how the F-15 did their business being at Kadena. So it worked out. That was one of the things the SAC people came and told us. 10 to 15% of you guys are going to die. Just look around. And of course, all the F-15 guys are going, no way. All right. No way.
So, I think it was the second night of Desert Storm. We're there doing our thing. There's nothing moving on the ground. Once the air war kicked off, when the war kicked off, the Aircrews stopped moving on the ground. So there was nothing at all for us to see. And we're just sitting up there burning gas, looking at nothing moving. And so at the time, this before we got JTIDs, our self-defense guy, literally, he had this big console and he pasted a map up on the console. Mm-hmm. It had a lat long readout. The reason he used that console was it had a lat long readout. And so he had a little airplane symbol that he kept putting on the map.
Oh, geez.
And he was listening to the
AWACS
and RJ.
Uh-huh.
And so
he's getting a pretty good picture.
Yeah, he's moving all these little airplane symbols around, red for bad guys, and the caps and all this stuff. All of a sudden, and I'm listening to this too, because I didn't have any air to run that night. And
you're a fighter guy and understand all this too.
Yeah, all of a sudden, RJ comes up, high-pitched voice, MiG-29, blah, 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 blah. You're reading off lat longs. And I kind of look over the corner, and here's our self-defense guy, and I see him, and here's our airplane symbol, and here's his fingers, one on latitude, one on longitude, and it very quickly became obvious that they were going to converge right about where our airplane was. And self-defense officer in a voice about 18 octaves higher than he normally talks, pilot, SDO, retrograde. We got a pre-stall buffet. We were turning so hard to south. Pilot way over, that was me. I said, you may want to think about pushing it up, taking it down, and depressurizing the airplane. Almost immediately, the airplane starts down. Feel the power come up. Flight engineer says, crew stand by for depressurization, for everybody to get their mask on. And then Archie comes in and he says, he's on us. And our airplane does this big right-hand turn.
Yeah.
I swear the air pressure in the cabin went up like 5 PSI because everybody was exhaling at the same time. And RJ was going, he's on us. The pilot says, don't relax just yet.
Good man.
And he's we're obviously turning away from something. Well, it turned out RJ was orbiting right above us it was. And he turns right to go south, and we turned left to go south. And when we rolled out, we were basically in tactical formation a couple of miles apart, stacked about 5,000 feet. And when he says, he's on us, that's when we turned away from our jet. The MiG, at this point, the MiG says, I've done my bit for Allah and country. And he turns around and goes home.
Oh, geez. And lands.
Yeah.
And everything's over with. Everything's done.
Yeah. Everything but falling asleep in the back of the airplane before this happened. After this happened,
everybody's wide awake. Everybody's so full of adrenaline, nobody's going to go to sleep. That's funny.
But if that guy had pressed that attack,
what would have happened?
Not only Mrs. Mason's little boy David's life would have been a lot different.
Yeah, the whole RJ.
But they would have taken the other Joint Stars out of the theater. Lord knows what they would have done with the RJs. I don't know. Big national capability there, and maybe we don't want to use those to support you flying guys anymore. Maybe we don't send so many airplanes north to drop bombs. Maybe we keep a whole bunch of them back here to avoid that happening again. The war, we would have still won. No doubt about it. But things would have been very, very different. Kafji, one of the reasons that Kafji was such a disaster for the Iraqis was because we saw them coming, and we bombed the shit out of them before they ever got across the border. Besides the very small group that took the town of Kafji, all the rest of their forces that were part of that battle were defeated in detail before they crossed the border. And
defeated in detail means exterminated.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so,
because we were able to see them coming.
Exactly.
And we were able to literally know exactly where on the Earth's surface they were and put warheads on foreheads.
When I was a forward air controller flying the OV-10, I also had to go out with the Army. And you would have things like somebody calls in a spot report. You see 2 BRDMs and a T-54 tank. And the intel guy would literally sit there and scratch his head and say, okay, I think that's the leading elements of this group outfit. Was it? He didn't really know. I mean, It was reading tea leaves. Joint Stars
changed all that.
Did away with all that. I mean, you see them coming. We would watch a convoy, and we'd watch it stop, and we would be able to say, okay, it stopped right here. Let's shoot a SAR, synthetic aperture radar, which you can see non-moving stuff. But we'd do a SAR at that point, and you'd see how the unit was laid out. Well, it turns out tanks go into a logger one way, a mech infantry unit goes another way, artillery unit goes another way.
Interesting.
And so they all have distinct signatures. And you'd say, oh, that's an artillery outfit. And so when they'd pass me the target, I'd be able to say, okay, Strike Eagles, here's exact GPS target coordinates for your target. Yeah. This is the center of the unit.
Rated coordinates, yeah. The center of their universe.
You got an arc of 6 artillery pieces. The arc is the long dimension is east-west or whatever it was, because they'd be able to give me, the comment from the F-15 guys was universally, it was exactly the way you told us it would be.
Oh, man.
Because they would go into it as they were approaching. Yeah. They'd do a SAR.
Yeah.
And sure enough, there it was, just we told them about. They drive over, overhead until they get the lantern working for them and roll in and
off we go.
Yeah.
Off we go. So the story that a good friend of mine told me, I interviewed him during the week, was the sandstorm is just kicking everybody's butt. And of course, Saddam thinks, okay, I can do it now. They're in my environment.
Yeah.
Surprise. And 4 Strike Eagles with GPS guided weapons. Of course, at that time, we only had 2,000 pounders, took out 72 tanks with 16 bombs. And I remember, Dave, the first night, the opening night of Iraqi freedom, and we had 3 J-Stars up looking into Western Iraq, Central Iraq, Eastern Iraq. And I'll never forget watching this. There's hundreds of J-Stars targets up there. And the ones that they were working on were upside down yellow triangles. And we watched them all turn right side and turn red, which means they were confirmed. All right. And I remember just watching all these triangles going boop, 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 turning right side up. All right. And we came in and just wasted those targets. All right. And again, the Strike Eagle guys, the F-16 guys are going, they're right where you told us they were. Right where you told us they were.
Part of that story. So you have to remember that that airplane was still in development. It really wasn't even close to being the finished product.
Like we have now. Yeah.
They had 2 airplanes. The airplanes used different radars because they would develop one and then they'd make changes and they'd build another one.
Yeah.
And then they'd send the first one back off to the factory to be updated to the next iteration.
Yeah.
And each iteration had more capability, but it required a different software build to be able to do that. The mechanization, the switchology, that wasn't there. The operator had a console, and there was some stuff that he could change, but for the most part, he had to call to the back of the airplane.
Oh, jeez.
And there was a Northrop Grumman
tech rep down there.
Senior guy down there. And he would talk. He had a laptop that was hardwired into the mother computer, and he would talk machine language to the mother computer to get it to do things like mode changes and this, that, and the other thing, you know. But even so, the airplane was still producing this.
As cumbersome as it was still giving mensurated target coordinate data to the guys.
Yeah, at the time, this was way out there. But
cosmic stuff.
Yeah. Like I said, you know, Custer would have killed to have. Do you know Custer? On the boat that brought him up there to the battle south of the battlefield, he had a section of Gatling guns.
No.
He left them behind because he thought they'd slow him down and he needed to get that engagement over with. Could you imagine? I could have had a different outcome.
Could you imagine 2 or 3 of those things up on top of that hill?
Yeah.
Okay.
It could have been really ugly for the Indians.
And really ugly for the Indians. And man, you wouldn't even have to point. You just had to sit there and crank that gun because they're all running circles. And you're just going, yeah, next clip. God, I didn't know that.
Things that, you know, you don't think about, things that end up hurting you. The maintenance TO has a very long, difficult procedure for removing the nose gear. And somebody at George Air Force Base came up with a better way to do for business. Wasn't quite as secure and stable, but it got it out a lot faster. They're doing phase maintenance on this F4, and they use this process to put the gear back in. Well, the top of the gear ends up hitting a little tube up there. Turns out that little tube is this little tiny, maybe 1/8-inch, very small steel tube. And what tube is used for is moving high pressure air from an air bottle to the gear actuator. So if you lose hydraulic,
blow it down,
blow the gear down. And they looked at it and they said, that tube's okay. It didn't really, there's a little tiny, almost imperceptible dent in it, but it looks okay. They go ahead and they put the gear and off they go. And blowing the gear down is not something you do to test.
No.
It's only done when you
really need it.
So, airplane takes off one day, goes out to the area, hydraulic failure.
And how are going to blow the gear down?
So they come back to George Air Force Base. Guy pulls the handle on the back seat to blow the gear down. 2 mains.
No nose gear.
No nose gear. So they shake and they do everything they can think to do, and they still get no nose gear. So the guy says, okay. They pull the approaching barrier out of the way. Guy touches down, flies the nose to the ground. G model.
Yeah.
G model, so you got all the electronics. That gets ground down.
To nothing.
Airplane ends up drifting off the edge of the concrete. The pilot didn't think to put the stopcock the engines as it departs the prepared surface.
Oh, no.
So it's sucking up California and spewing it out the back of the airplane. Damn engines kept working.
Really?
They kept working. Finally, he says, this is bad. I think maybe even the SOF or somebody said, shut
the engine off.
They shut them down. They did not bail out. They stuck with it.
Ground egress.
So, and then they found out that the reason that this is happening. So
that little dent in the tube.
They decide they're going to go save this airplane to prevent it from being a Class A accident. You know, the Air Force has got spare parts of jets.
Mm-hmm.
There was one F-4 center wing section left. Oh, wait, I'm getting ahead of my... They rebuild the nose.
The nose of all the electronics.
Yeah, they actually
all the sensors.
Ended up bringing in a new nose section, and then they rebuilt the gondola. And they discovered that the wing spar was cracked. It had been cracked.
For however long. Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
But now they know it. They got to fix it. And so it's very, very difficult to separate the fuselage and the wing, but they do. They bring in the last F-4
wing box
that they've got, put it up there, put it all back together again. They get ready to test fly it, and they announce that they're retiring the airplane. No, F-4's G model Spirit. Mark, the airplane never flew again after doing all that work. They trucked it up to Nellis, and they used it as a target.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. That's crazy. That's why we go put another runway and a new gate at Clark right before we give it back to the Filipinos.
Yeah. It's a shame we can't get up there. I can show you this. On the top of the ejection seat, there are the way this particular Martin Baker seat works. If you pull on the overhead handles, it is just attached to this rod, and the rod's attached to this little wedge shape, and it forces this device up, and then springs force it down, and that's when it snaps down. It's actually the firing pins on the bottom of the thing, and that's what fires the thing off. But as a part of this mechanism, there are these two curved pieces. They're called banana clips. And so we have a guy out there pre-flighting an airplane one day. But do not touch the banana clips. You just do not touch banana clips. And I don't know what happened, but he's falling out of the airplane. He slipped and he's falling out of the airplane, and he reaches over
and he grabs
the banana clips and pulls them back and fires the damn suit.
Oh no.
And fortunately he was far enough out of the cockpit that when it fired,
he didn't go with it.
Yeah, it kicked him around, and I think he ended up dislocating a shoulder or something. He hurt himself. But he returned to flying eventually. But that's...
Oh, jeez.
So after that, I was like super respectful of the banana clips.
Okay. Yeah, the Maverick missiles on that triple launcher.
Which we never use a triple launcher. That thing has so much drag. No, I'm dead serious. It really is a very, very high drag. The launcher, there's a big electronic box you can see that's on the back of the launcher.
It was one single rail. Yeah.
Single rail launcher. That's what we used. I had 3 missiles that I shot. You've already heard about the Shrike. Okay. Actually, my Maverick, and now that I think about this, the Maverick worked as advertised. However, we had another guy in the squadron, and I knew that he had been out to go shoot this, and he says, "You need to come in and watch this." Okay. The missile, he had his wingman behind him filming. The missile comes off the rail, does its little pitch up to G-bias maneuver, and then the rate gyro failed and the missile goes hard left. Exit stage left.
And where is it going?
Well, that's why you do that footprint. When you can only attack on a certain heading. It's just so that's not an issue.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, see, there's the Shrike and a harm.
Really night and day in terms of capability. There's so many things I could tell you about this. Okay, so you don't know where the site is. Because you're flying your F-105. It doesn't do ranging. The F-4G does ranging. And so that's why you got the footprint up there. So you see where the emitter is, you put the foot over the emitter, you're good to go, you shoot the thing. F-105, not so much. So what they would have to do is called a dip check. And what they would do is they would come in and call up the seeker head, the ILS needles, NDI, would respond to the commands that are coming out of the seeker head, and they would bore sight the site. And they would note what the dive angle was, the altitude was. A little simple math later, of course, math in public. That's how they determined how far they were from the site by doing a dip check. Now, you got MiGs out there. So you're here with a face full of instrument trying to do this damn dip check. Triple A going off.
No worries.
This thing, they very quickly figured you could actually see, and I've got a picture of a SA2 scope that shows a harm separating from an F-105.
Oh, really?
You can, they called it the downward detaching target. No, seriously, that was the Russian term. The Soviet term for that was the downward detaching target. You see that, what do you do? ON OFF switch to OFF. And Mr. Shrike here, who has no memory, goes stupid.
They would blink.
Not so much with this.
The harm knew where it was going.
The harm memorizes the position on the ground. Well, number one, electronics in the airplane download all this information in
the missile. Yeah.
And so the missile knows not only where its target is, but it knows where all the other radars are. And the missile knows how far it can fly. So it says, oh, my target went down. Number one, are any of the other signals associated with that site still up? Let's say the guidance signal was still up. Just guide on that instead.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Okay. None of the signals for that site are up. I'll just wait. If I'm high enough, I'll just wait.
Oh, yeah.
If I'm not high enough.
Oh, yeah, because they'll shoot up like to the moon and hang out.
And if I'm getting to the point where I can't, I've got to make a decision here. What am I going to do? I'll just go kill this other thing. It's, it was downloaded to me. I know where it is. It's still radiating. I'll just go over there. If you're too low to do that, it says, well, I know you were right there a minute ago. I'll just fly there.
So it doesn't matter if you're on or off.
Right.
You're going to get smacked by, what is it, 1,200 tungsten steel cubes or something, or whatever is in the warhead.
You see those two little panels on the side of the missile there. That's a proximity fuse. And what that does is it's looking for the radar signal so it explodes even the radar, because a lot of these things are far off the ground. You don't want to hit the ground. Also this is going that away, like a cone going. They don't just go out.
The harm warhead goes 90 degrees to the missile.
But it uses, see that little red box?
Yeah, the little red box.
Portals? Laser.
Oh, so it knows height.
That's right. And so one of the things that gets downloaded into the missile
is height.
Is the emitter height. And so if you're shooting a ship, let's say you're a Navy harm, you know that the crest to such and such antenna, topsail antenna, is located at this height. So you go off. You're looking for that altitude, as opposed to, let's say, you're going against some other kind of crested to.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a freaking smart missile.
Really smart missile. Look how big this airplane is, man.
Oh, yeah.
We're standing next to an F-105G Wild Weasel from the 17th Wild Weasel Squadron. One of the few F-105s that's even left on the planet. And this is just a big, big airplane.
Oh, yeah.
A big airplane. But man,
it's got a bomb bay.
Yeah, I know.
This particular one, the D model does.
Has a bomb bay. I know. They put an extra gas tank in it, but it was made to go supersonic and drop nuclear bombs.
Yeah. Teach the communist horde the ultimate physics lesson.
Yeah. Or as we used to say at Pease, 2.5 megatons of thermonuclear attitude adjustment. But again, look at the back panel up there, too. And you see all the instruments and everything.
Okay, you see the little squares? That's a 159. And the little round scope to the other side of it is, I believe, an APR-36. APR-36 was a predecessor to the LR-46. What this used was strobes. Instead of getting a 2 or a 3 or whatever, gave you this little coated strobe. And so here you are in the middle of staying alive over North Vietnam saying,
it's pointing this direction.
The 159 not mistaken, and I may not be this, but that looked at the fan song scan pattern, and it could tell the EWO if they were targeted or not because the way the scan pattern was.
Interesting.
And so they would know if the radar was targeted against them because of that.
Boy, that's some old technology compared to your F4G.
Oh, yeah, ancient. So I'm flying, I'm getting my Weasel training, and I'm with a guy who'd been an EWO on these things at one time. And he says, let me show you how we did it in Vietnam. He says, turn left to 020. There's an SA-2 out there.
Mm-hmm. There.
And we did a homing run because that doesn't tell you range. You can do a dip check, but if you're low altitude, you can't be doing anything to dip. What he would do is he gave me, left, right, left, now, and you'd roll up and look down.
And there it was. Oh, geez. And you wonder why we lost so many Weasel guys when we first started this whole thing.
Yeah.
The reason I like this particular squadron is because obviously the big shark mouth that they've got on the nose of these things. This is the way they went into combat, the 17th Wild Weasel Squadron. And this airplane, 440, actually was a Vietnam SAM killer. I looked it up in a bunch of books.
My guess is, Mark, there's not a 105G out there that didn't go through Vietnam.
I'm sure.
I doubt very seriously if there are any D-model F-105s that did not go to Vietnam. Because what do we lose?
Oh, it was in the hundreds.
Yeah.
It was in the hundreds. Dave, it's been great.
Yeah, always is.
Some great. So Dave and I could probably go on for hours doing this.
And folks, we did. 2 aviators walking around inside of an airplane museum. And I want to thank Dave for spending the time with me. He actually drove from his home in Colorado to the Hill Air Force Base Museum, went to the commissary and did some other things. And I'm so grateful for him giving me a call, telling me he's going to be in town. And this was really one of those interviews that was really spur of the moment. But you can listen to the stuff we were talking about. 2 guys, flyers, walking around a museum. Thanks again to our sponsor, Tanker Pilot, Lessons from the Cockpit, a book that can be found on Amazon in all 4 formats. Please share this episode with your family and loved ones and friends. And more episodes are found on my website, markhasera.com, under the podcast pull-down box. On next week's show, I'm talking to a weapons system operator who flew F-15E Strike Eagles on the 4th of March, 2002. This Wizzo was flying in Twister 5-2, an F-15E covering the rescue of Navy SEAL Neil Roberts. Yes, he was involved in the Battle of Roberts Ridge. And wait till you hear some of his audio, because he shared with me his targeting tape video from the mission. Amazing stuff. Again, folks, thanks for listening. Please share this episode and other episodes with family, friends, and loved ones. And we will talk to you again next week on the Lessons from the Cockpit Show.